What's up guys, this is Bustin here coming at you with another Dragon Ball CCG deck profile. And today I have my Mono Alien Frieza family deck for you. Now this deck is actually probably the most serious Frieza family deck that I've built. I like it very much. Through playtesting it's been great fun to play it. There's a lot of different little things you can do in the deck. It's quite strategic. And it's just nice to finally have a deck where I'm not forcing the Frieza chain, or I'm not forcing any kind of evolution chain, and you can just go freely in the deck. Realistically, you're not wasting cards to gather the cards so they can evolve and stuff like that. So let's jump into the deck profile and see where we end up in the other end. Alright guys, so as always I start with the turn zeros, and you can immediately laugh it up. This is a serious thing. I'm running 3 raspberries. A lot of people are shitting on this card like, oh, you know, raspberry, it's not a 3 lead power card. So what? We are running Nappa here, and I'm gonna tell you why these cards just work between the 0 and the 1 drop. So Raspberry is Frieza family, so that's already important for us, and it's a 2-1-1-1. Okay, so that means that later on in the game, when Raspberry's not your only warrior, you can still get 1 support out of this guy, which is not something that you can get off the set 1 Goku, the Kid Goku. It's not something that you get off King Cold. It's not something that you get off the set 5 Yamcha. It's not something that you get off Piccolo Jr. and certainly not something that you get off Zunama. So this guy actually keeps a little bit more playability over time in the game, and this isn't one of those decks that's gonna win the game, you know, in like turn 2 or turn 3. In fact, I really don't think there are many decks that would win on turn 2 or 3 in this game. And even if it's injured, it still is a 1-1, so it's still a good support warrior as injured. So you can use this guy if you play it. Your opponent comes down with a Kid Goku, fine, defend with it. It's still a 1-1. Next turn you play something that has a bit more of a punch, you still have a 1 support now. So, you know, in my world, that's a good card. That's some flexibility. It's not huge, but it is Frieza family at the end of the day, and it's a 0 drop. Now, of course, the other guy, the big guy, King Cold, has to be run in here. Has to be run because it's Frieza family, and it searches for a Frieza or a Cooler. We have both in the deck. Not only that, but even in injured status, you can sack it for 1 chi to heal one of your Frieza or Cooler, which is just really good. You know, the 3-0 that it comes down with, again, very good if you decide to search for one of these guys, unless you have one in your hand. I would definitely make sure that you block with this guy. If you can again play a little trick, you know, mind game on your opponent. Let's say you got the Freezer in your hand, that's what you want. You play King Cold, you search actively for the Frieza, put it on top of your deck, then your opponent swings. It's fine. Just block with King Cold, doesn't matter. Or you don't need to block with King Cold, doesn't matter, because you're gonna, okay, you lose your Frieza, but you got 1 in your hand, and then you know what your first planet damage is, which is quite important actually, to have a little bit of information about what your planet damage looks like. So we're running 3 Raspberries, 3 King Colds, both of them are Frieza family cards, and we are running 2 Old Kais because Old Kai is pretty cool. If you get a turn 0 Raspberry, you get a turn 1 Old Kai. They're actually a team power of 4. You get a King Cold, you get Old Kai. Turn 1, you got a team power of 5. Even better. You get a King Cold and a Raspberry, you got a team power of 4. Obviously, King Cold being the lead warrior and Raspberry supporting. But Old Kai just, you know, it really helps you against fierce decks that are trying to mill you out. If something goes down to your chi and you want it back in your deck, use it as chi power and then send it back to your deck with Old Kai. Easy and simple. So these are 8 cards for turn 0, and then we are running the set 5 Nappa at turn 1, and this guy makes this guy a lot more playable. This turn 1 Nappa, it's almost one of a kind. There really aren't too many cards that have a 4 power on turn 1. This guy has, and then the other set 5 card is Yajirobe. And I was really digging through, the other sets, and without like spending a lot of effort in getting something down that may be a 4 power, Napper is definitely one of the best. On top of that, just, the cherry on the top, this guy is Frieza family as well. It has backup, so you can do the little Ghost Nappa thing. If Nappa dies, goes to your chi, you then back up next turn, you play it again. Every time this guy comes down, obviously you can put a -1/-1 coin on one of your opponent's warriors with a turn cost of 1 or less. Early game, that can be quite brutal. So, if you have turn 0 Old Kai, turn 1 Nappa, turn 2 you got a power of 6. A better version is if you have a turn 0 Raspberry, a turn 1 Nappa, and then you get a team power of 5. I'd say better version because Old Kai is really not the card you necessarily want to play on turn 0. It's more of a turn 1 card. But if you got Nappa in your hand, I would definitely start with Old Kai. Get Old Kai out, run it out. Don't block with him. Just make sure that he survives, then get Nappa down, and then you got a team of 6. You probably -1/-1 one of your opponent's warriors as well, so you have a good chance of connecting. Even better chance of actually getting maybe a couple of planet damage in as well. So this is basically our turn 0, turn 1 build. It's 11 cards, which is it's a little bit over the quarter of the deck, so we have a fairly okay chance to get one, hopefully 2 of these cards in our starting hand. Ideally, at least 2. Okay, so this is it for turn 0, turn 1. Let's move on to turn 2. Now, obviously, with running King Cold, we do want to see the turn 2 Frieza. Again, this guy is just a monster. Imagine leading with a King Cold, then playing your Nappa. You then got 2 attackers that you can potentially go out with. Maybe they both connect. And then turn 2, you get your Nappa, you get your Frieza behind it. If you've taken a damage, which I would recommend you actually do to get the Dragon Ball on Frieza, spend a chi, move it off from King Cold or Nappa, then you can actually make this team an 8 just by giving Nappa +1. If he dies, well, that's unfortunate. Then you might have to Old Kai him back or something. He goes into the discard, not into the chi. If he went to the chi, it would be amazing actually, but even with that restriction, just a free +0/+1 is great. I mean, this is, if you compare this guy with the set 1 Master Roshi, this actually is somewhat better, especially if you know that you're gonna be connecting and there will be no problems. So really, really, really cool card. I love the Frieza. It is, to me, a staple in any alien deck, realistically. I would be really hard pushed to not run. Just this combo sets up your game so well. You gotta be running these 2. Now this deck started out very differently. Went through quite a lot of different iterations, but we ended up on Zarbon because primarily of the Plunder. Plunder is really good, and he's just like a really solid support warrior. He doesn't cost you any chi as well, whereas Frieza will cost you 1 blue. Zarbon doesn't. We are not evolving to the transformed form of Zarbon. It's not really worth it, realistically. I've tried it. It's not super great. But if that's where you want to go with the deck, then by all means go for it. Because the next card, we have 2 knees from Cooler Force, and you would have to take these 2 out to put in the transformed Zarbon, the beast form, into the deck. Now, I would much rather run these, honestly, for a lot of reasons, actually. First of all, this guy is Cooler family, and so is King Cold. King Cold is also Cooler family, and because we are running coolers as well, we technically can get UFO landing, which is also a card we're running, off Cooler family. But obviously, primarily we want to get it off Frieza family, as most of our cards are that. But Knees is a 3/3 injured, a 1/2. Yes, it does cost you 1 chi, but honestly, it is a solid card. Also, in either player strategy phase, sorry, this was my speaker just dying on me, so I'm going to continue like this. In either player strategy phase, you can pay 1 any chi, a generic chi, and target warrior gets -1/-1 until end of turn. Now, it is not necessarily an ability that you want to use every turn. Reason being for that is because you have to do this in the strategy phase. Now, it might be better to be used during your strategy, but you can also use it during your opponent's strategy. It's just that, you know, if you use it, bear in mind that your opponent might just choose to disregard that warrior and not organize it into a team. But it's certainly very good if your opponent's relying like something like a Raspberry, which has minimal support, but it does have some, and wants to use them as a support warrior. But the main reason why we're running this guy along with Zarbon is because they're both very good support warriors. Moving on to turn 4. Turn 4 is a great turn in this deck. It allows us to play Cooler. Cooler is amazing, especially in a mono alien deck. It's just such a good card. Obviously, it does compete with Kibito Kai. Thing is, with Kibito Kai, obviously you can't search for it, certainly not with King Cold, and as I said, King Cold is a mainstay in this deck. On top of that, again, as I said, with the Cooler family having Cooler, Naze, and King Cold, you can activate UFO landing, not just of Frieza family, which are other cards, not obviously not these. But we got Fierce One here. When he comes into play, you can search your deck for a Cooler Force Warrior to really put on top of your planet, so you can actually search for a Naze if you want. You can also search for the evolution of this guy, because we are running the 4th form. Well done, Bandai, for screwing up the numbers, by the way. I'm gonna call that out every time. Of course I will. And he is really solid as a lead warrior, but he's also very, very, very solid as a support warrior, because he will basically give your lead warrior +1/+0. So he's on par with Kibito Kai. Where Kibito Kai shines is if you have more than one in your hand, you're obviously going to be able to put growth coins on your guys, which realistically is very useful, don't get me wrong. And Kibito Kai is a 4/4/2/2. 3rd form Cooler is a 5/3/4/1. The Fierce and the evolution is obviously valid, but again, as I said, that evolution for free into the big guy, which normally costs us 2 chi, that's a lot of bang for your bucks. This guy, oh my god, I'm so happy I finally get to run this guy in a deck where he makes sense. He does a lot of great stuff, and trust me, guys, this guy is so much better than the promo, the turn 3 of Vegeta, which came out in set 3. Yes, that guy is also Frieza family. In fact, these are the 2 Vegetas that are Frieza family. But let's start with the art. The art on this card is man. When I started to collect for this game back in 2009. I was dying to get a copy of this guy, and actually I did in one of my very first boosters, and I was over the moon, absolutely over the moon. It's a very solid card. It has super heal, it has toughness. You have to send him out to attack, but he's not like Broly from set 5. He doesn't need to be sent out to battle. Okay, so he only needs to be sent out when it's your turn and you need to attack. And very importantly, it's not a valid ability, so if he does get injured, he doesn't have to be sent out to attack anymore, and he still stays a 5/0. Down from a 6/2 to a 5/0, you're not actually losing a hell of a lot. So, such a solid card. On top of that, he is Frieza family. He is a Saiyan. Yes, we can also activate UFO landing of Saiyans, because we have 2 of this guy. We have 2 Turles. Turles, just another. Obviously, these are in my opinion, the best alien Saiyans. But I would also say that Bardock is an extremely good support Saiyan with the 5/3 that he has, 4/3 that he has. No other Saiyan has a 3 support in alien color. So if you want to go ahead and try and build like like a mono alien Saiyan deck, well, you're not going to succeed. You're going to have to splash super, but you are very likely to be using some of these guys. Maybe the set 5 Vegeta though. So Turles, Gives us obviously brilliant. Comes down, searches our deck for an event card, comes straight up to the hand. Unlike any other warrior, this is just amazing. It has toughness. It's a 6/0/4/0. So again, it has very similar stats to Vegeta. Obviously, Vegeta comes down a turn early, but these are all mostly our main beaters. Of course, you want these guys to be at the front of your team, and then get them supported by Cooler, Knees, Zarbon, Frieza, Old Kai, whatever you name it. Turles also, whenever he attacks, whenever he's sent out to battle, so that's your turn, your opponent's turn. If you're defending this guy, your opponent immediately has to mill a card from the top of their deck, which is really cool. You know, you can hit something crucial and just basically getting closer to hopefully maybe decking them out. Although with the amount of deck profiles I've done and how many times I recommended Old Kai, and now Journey of Adventure as well, hint hint, I'm sure you guys know by now how to defend yourselves against the fierce decks. But if somebody builds a proper fierce deck, you would have to have some really solid game plan to be able to stop a fierce deck. Still, we're not really looking to fierce our opponent out, but there is a chance for it, obviously, because we have. I mean, Alien is the #1 fierce force to reckon with. So these are set 4, turn 4, turn 5, and then turn 6 we have this bad boy. He's obviously able to come down turn 5 with the 3rd form. Also Cooler family, so he also works with your UFO landing, and ideally you do want to bring him down with evolution, because that 2 blue chi cost is very expensive. But he's an absolute beater, having a 7 power, but that 3 support is also very useful, and it almost has a built-in DOTC. It's very, very costly. You can only use it during your strategy phase. He needs to have a Dragon Ball on him, and you do need to spend a generic Chi on the ability as well. But you can remove target warrior an opponent controls with a turn cost of 3 or less from each team. Why is that so good still? Because your opponent can't reorganize teams during their turn unless they have a specific event down, something that allows them to do so, or they have like a Goku, a set 1 starter Goku that can jump around teams and stuff like that. You pull that off, you are basically gonna be like, imagine getting a Izara team, they lose 3 power. You just have this beater down now, also has Fierce 2, just really, really powerful, and it's really good for the top level. Now, what's great about these two is that you're not forcing the evolution. So a lot of the times you might just hard cast 4th form Cooler, which is fine. Obviously, you do need to manage your chi, as with any deck. Trying to keep the chi costs down, but with Alien it's difficult because a lot of the good cards like Vegeta, Turles, Knees, the turn 2 Frieza, they all cost chi, and that's obviously that's not great. But if your draw engine sort of works, then hopefully at any point in time you will have 4 to 6 cards in your hand. So I highly recommend you actually charge chi from your hand. Certainly as long as you got UFO landings in play, just make sure that you charge from hand, and then you're not burning cards off the top of your deck, not knowing what they are. You can just basically cherry pick what you want to go into your chi and what you want to keep in your hand. So this is it for our Warriors 25 as usual. There aren't many occasions. Some of you have asked me, like, is there any occasion where you would run less Warriors than techniques or events? Absolutely not. You need the Warriors to be able to use the techniques. You know, when I play this game, a lot of the times I run into situations where people don't actually say who's using a technique. So then obviously I have to ask because I must know. Actually, announcing who's using what technique is essential in this game. So guys, please start doing that if you're playing this game. Alright, now on to events. I like to go through the events first. We are running very simply 3 new scanners and 3 UFO landings. I kept pinpointing why we're running UFO landings. Mostly we want to pull this off Frieza family, but we can also pull it off Saiyans, we can also pull this off Cooler family. So you got a lot of different ways to bank off UFO landing. Make sure you don't pay play it too early. That's very important. Don't be tempted in being a 1-turn cost and then running it out on turn 1 and then not getting any card draw off it. You want to make sure that, you know, you hopefully maybe you get a Raspberry turn 1, you then get a Nappa. So turn 0, turn 1, you get a Nappa, turn 2, you get a Frieza. So when you know that you're going to be playing that Frieza on turn 2, that's when you run out your UFO landing, and try not to kill your guys, because then you're not going to be triggering that landing at the end of your turn. This card can draw you 4 cards. So it's very, 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 very powerful in this particular deck. New Scanner isn't necessarily a card draw, but again, I talked about the importance of really knowing what you're charging down to your chi. Again, a lot of decks I build and a lot of decks I see floating around, you know, you got a couple of those key cards, you end up charging them off the top of your deck, which tends to happen to me on turn 0, of course. When you charge off your one only copy of 4-form Cooler, which I did back in the days when I only had the 1 copy. It's pain. It is brutal pain when that happens. So New Scanner, although it does not come down earlier than turn 3, it does stay in the game for a solid 4 turns, basically, including the turn you play it. And it allows you to basically look at the top 2 of your deck in your draw phase rather than drawing. You look at the top 2, you put 1 into your hand, and then the second one you can either leave on the top if you want to charge it down to chi, or you can put it at the bottom of your deck if you kind of want to risk what's below it. But if it's an important card and you want to keep it, then, you know, tuck it at the bottom, and you know, it certainly helps you with getting to the cards that you need quicker. And that's realistically what New Scanner does. It's a highly underrated card, by the way. I really barely see it in decks, and I would say consider running this guy because it's very, very, very good. Another really sweet thing you can do is if you know you can charge from your hand, you can New Scanner, pick 1, leave the second one on top of your deck, and then at the end of your turn you're going to UFO land that card into your hand. Amazing. Also can be a cool little combo if you already have, let's say, 3 Frieza family cards down, and you end up playing like King Cold on turn 2 for whatever reason, and then you have Frieza on top of your deck. Again, you can basically just pick it up with UFO landing. You're not going to have New Scanner in that particular occasion, but you can still pick it up into your hand with UFO landing, and then that's fine. You got the card that you need for turn 3. You're good to go. Happy days. So these two events, I actually ran these about, oh gosh, at least a good year ago, when I was first trying to make like a semi-decent Ginyu Force deck, which is pretty much impossible at this point. I have tried and tested so many different ways, but what I did learn from building that deck is that these cards are probably the best sort of deck manipulation / draw engines that you find in Alien. Maybe not exclusively 2 of the best, but certainly 2 of the best ones. Just one more quick word. You can run the card, I think, it's not Appointment of the Force. It's a set 1 or set 2 Alien event that whenever you play a Frieza family card, you can look at the top of your deck and either send it to the bottom or leave it on the top. If that's what you got, run it, but New Scanner is strictly better than that. First of all, you're not necessarily always going to be playing Frieza family cards. Second of all, this just goes off whenever you would draw, and it gives you that card selection that you want. Basically, draw from, you know, decide from 2 cards what you want to draw rather than just picking the one unknown. And then down to techniques. Now, blue, and yes, there is a little bit of a villain splash with obviously Turles and Dirty Trick. But again, guys, you know me, I fucking love Dirty Trick. It's an amazing card. These 3 cards basically give you 6 techniques. It's splashable to any deck. What else can I say about it? It's a -1/-1, obviously. But what's really important is that it's live very early. So, you know, you get that Raspberry down turn 0, you pass the turn, you don't attack, maybe you pass the turn, your opponent brings down like you know, their first turn 0 Goku, obviously. you're gonna block with that Raspberry, you're gonna dirty trick onto it, and then not only your Raspberry is gonna get injured, but your opponent's Goku's gonna get injured as well. Getting rid of those Gokus can be heartbreaking for a lot of the decks, especially if your opponent's like, trying to use that later on to fuse into Goku or Gogeta or Gota or Vegito or just generally having a turn 0 Saiyan down is, again, it can be super, super good. Now the big guy here, gosh, how many games this card won me? Powerful Heritage. Again, I'm just the turn 1 Nappa, when it comes down, this is live from turn 3, so when you play your Frieza turn 2, let's say you got this going on, let's say your opponent swings, you're in turn 3, you Powerful Heritage, you made this team into a 7, maybe it's an 8, because you give Nappa +1 with Frieza, especially if you know you got Powerful Heritage in your hand. It's an 8 +5, it's a 13 team power, just the two of them together. You're defending on turn 3, your opponent may have committed into it, and you just got yourself an overwhelming victory, which just cripples your opponent. And after that, it's a merry-go-ride to bring you to win. So, such a good card. And obviously, you don't necessarily have to use it on the Saiyans. Yeah, that +2/+0, Expert Saiyan, super amazing. But it's still a solid +3/+0. It's still basically an Evil Cannon. The only difference is that this is a turn 3, whereas Evil Cannon is a turn 2. But obviously, we can't run Evil Cannon. Why would we if we got so many Saiyans here? Another underrated card, but it's so necessary to be ran, is Shockwave. It's got quite a hefty cost, actually, certainly if you compare it to these guys. These guys are super mana efficient, super chi efficient. It's a turn 4, costs you 3 chi. You need to have a Dragon Ball on the user, but target opposing warrior gets +0 -X, where X is the user's turn cost. You do a Shockwave with, I don't know, let's say, it can be, let's say, a 3rd or a 4th form cooler, especially if you evolve into that 4th form cooler on turn 5. Your opponent may be playing a Majin Buu, the set 3 Majin Buu, which is a 5/5/5/5. You just nailed that guy if that was used. Basically, this card used on time correctly is just absolutely going to 0 one of your opponent's support warriors, and that's what we want to do with this. So we actually got like 8 sort of, we only have 3 pumps, because the pumps are the Powerful Heritage. These are like minus, like basically minus your opponent's warriors, and also it removes an event. Event removal, set 5 gave us so many great event removals, guys. You're crazy if you're not taking advantage of that. You just have to. Shockwave, amazing. And then you're not gonna guess Dignity of the Conqueror. Every time I build a deck and I don't have DOTC in it, and then I get DOTC by my opponent, I'm like, Balash, you are an idiot, mate. Buzz, you need to rework that deck. But sometimes it can be extremely hard to find that one slot to run the DOTC, especially if you're running like specific combo decks. And obviously you guys see me go after a lot of very specific decks where you need pretty much every single card. But this is more like going back to the roots and just enjoying the gameplay as is, and just having like a generally good. I always wanted to like have a solid alien deck. Where you're basically just running mono alien, but you got all the great stuff that you can get. Like King Cold is one of the best 0-drops, obviously. It's not as good as Yamcha, but it's definitely there, certainly. Master Roshi, Sapphire Master Roshi is probably top 1, actually, to be honest with you guys. Because he can be both attack, he can be defense, backup. Yamcha from set 5, I think that's my top 1, actually. It's a 3/1, 3/0/1/0. Also has backup, but also searches for a female, and then it gives +0/+1 to all females. I mean, those cards alone are better than the Kiku, the 0-drop Kiku. Yeah, he's strong, don't get me wrong. and then you can get a lot of use from it late game. But why would you want to keep a 0-drop around for like turn 4, turn 7 by the time you can fuse into Gogeta? How's that little guy gonna survive? It's not, realistically, is it? So I'd like to get value out of cards quickly, because that is crucial in this game. If you can just set up what you're gonna draw on. And this card does it fairly well. It's not like super great because Alien doesn't have a lot of tools that, for example, like Villain is just crazy good. The only thing that Villain lacks is it doesn't really have. In fact, it does not have a solid 0-drop. You can run Dracula Man, but from the turn after you played him, you also don't really have a lot of good turn 1 support villain cards. There's a few. Colonel Violet is good. I think Ninja Murasaki is a good 0-drop, but again, you kind of like, okay, when you drop him, you then need to drop Supreme Commander Red turn 1. Turn 2, maybe Violet, but then again, turn 2, you probably want to run Wheelo. And that brings me to my final point. Why am I not running Wheelo? Because every fucking deck runs Wheelo, that's why. Peace out, YouTube. Basim signing out.